nomenclature is a really interesting aspect of
Yes.
this. And just having discussions with people about it, because I know people who think words like cripple and gimp are just no-nos, like they're no-touch subjects.
Yeah.
And then whereas I'm personally don't really care at all. I find it hilarious personally, and it's me making light of it. So I suppose it really depends on who you know and that sort of thing. But it kind of reminded me of a story where we were playing it's like gestures where it's like charades timed, so you have to like do it really fast. Anyway, the point is the guy was trying to act out handicap.
Oh god.
And it was my friend's boyfriend, and it was actually the first time. They're married now, and we're great friends, but it was the first time we met. And so I had one friend acting it out, and he just kept pointing at me, and then my friend's boyfriend was guessing, and he just yells out and points at me, "Gimp!" And everyone just kind of goes silent. I start laughing because I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And he goes beet red because he just realized what he did.
Filter.
And he's like, "I don't know this girl. Oh my god!" And he felt so bad, which I actually appreciate that he felt bad because he didn't know me well enough to really do it.
Yeah.
But I was at the end of the day, I was like, "Okay, now you're clearly we're going to be good friends." Like,
or the worst enemies.
I think that's so interesting. I'll come back to what we talked about before we started filming.
Yes.
I have no issue with the fact that somebody wants to identify with any of those words, gimp, cripple. However, I personally don't use them, and I find for myself it's not anything other than the fact that my friends who are para, there's a sense of community around words like cripple and gimp or crip. For me, the word cripple, I don't use it because when I say it or when I visualize it, I think of almost like a crushed can. It was almost like a sound that a can makes. It's like cripple, So for me, that's actually funny in itself. But for me, that's personally why I don't identify with the term, but maybe it's different because I have cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
And there's been a sense of culture that's been built around individuals who want to empower themselves, who are paraplegic or quadriplegic, where that's commonly used. And so I have to take a step back outside of my own opinions on it and say, yes. The other thing is the word handicap. I don't like that word, but it's only because I know the origin of the word handicap.
Which I didn't until today.
Yeah, and so I'll quickly explain that. So back in like the 1800s, early 1900s, when often many people with disabilities across the world, not just North America or what have you, they were left on the streets to fend for themselves. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of hospital care. They were looked at as a lost cause. So many people would become buskers or street performers. And so they would have a hat or some form of cap. And so walkers by would say, well, isn't that a handicap, when they would be collecting cash or donations for their talent? And so when you know the origin of the word handicap, that's why I don't use it. And then when I go to the States, it drives me nuts because it's not called an accessible parking spot. It's still called a handicap parking spot. So for me, that's my only qualm. But it's because I also do a lot of work with inaccessibility. So I have exposure to things and to culture and to history that some people might not. Right.
Nomenclature is such because the thing is, words only have power. They're literally just noises.
That's right.
And so I'm always intrigued about the subject because sometimes people can get vehemently by those particular noises or by the history behind them.
Yes.
And that's what makes them bad. But what words develop over eras. At one point, it was politically correct to use idiot. At one point, it was politically correct to use moron. At one point, and then it sort of gets changed and morphs as time goes on. So I personally have kind of held this sort of, I don't really care what word you use as long as I understand your intention.
That's a great point.
Yeah, the conversation.
Adding on to that, I personally take that stance too. I remember reading something, a blog written by a mother about how her child was so frustrated, angry at her mother, but the child didn't know any swear words. So the child said crumple pants or something really silly sounding. But the mother felt really hurt because the intention portrayed by the child was anger and the mother was really hurt.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. Yeah. And so intention is everything. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Marco, just because I could say a socially inappropriate word without that intention, should I? There's other words I could use, right?
I suppose it depends on your audience.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, it also depends on how the majority of individuals would perceive your intention.
Right,
Sorry, please.
Well, it just means it's difficult because it sort of depends on where you are, and you're sort of like hopping about trying to find your footing of where it's okay and where it's not okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so then, doesn't the answer seem to be, okay, so, it looks like it bothered you or it upset you when I said this word. I just wanted you to know that the intention was this, and I'd love to hear why that bothered you. Of course, still not knowing my intention at that point, and starting these conversations. And part of the conversation that we've talked about before is, okay, so people are willing to learn now. They're willing to be educated.
Mm-hmm.
And so what form does that take every once in a while?
Yeah.
Asking questions.
Sure, yeah.